Hello, and thank you for joining me. My name is Joe Lattal, and I'm part of the student organizations and activities team at Northwestern. In this session, I am going to share information about a free platform available to you as part of Res College Exec to manage a lot of different administrative needs for your group. So let's get started. This is a brief refresher on the IT and just general tech available to you given your student status. Northwestern IT manages email listservs, so if you need to invite folks to a listserv or create a new listserv, there's info about that on the IT website. They also manage organizational inboxes. So if you need to access a Res College email or create a new one, IT can help with that too. They also manage Box, which is a file storage and collaboration platform similar to Google Drive. And they also support org websites on the NU server space. SOA is able to support Wildcat Connection, which is a platform for you to do a lot of different things among other options that are out there. And that's what we're going to focus on in this session. We like to think of it as the Canvas equivalent for student life beyond academics. So for example, when you're enrolled in maybe 3 or 4 classes and you're about to start your work, you want to know what's the next deadline I have? What do I have to respond to? Without having to go through a bunch of different syllabi and planners. So Canvas does that for you. Similarly, you're a resident on campus. You might be actively involved in another student organization. You might be a member of another organization, and organizations put on events and opportunities that you want to know about. Wildcat Connection puts that all in one place for you, so you don't have to navigate a whole lot of different listservs, social media channels, or other ways to get that content. It's supported by a third-party platform. This is not a Northwestern created software. It's called Campus Labs. And on Wildcat Connection, you'll find pages for all of the registered student organizations, sorority and fraternity chapters, and also the councils, res-based associations such as res colleges, res halls, areas. Some campus departments have pages on here as well, and pages that are sponsored by TGS and some other graduate and professional school groups. Students most commonly find out about Wildcat Connection through Wildcat Welcome. New student and family programs often gets asked, how do I find a list of all the organizations at Northwestern? The answer is Wildcat Connection. Similarly, we hosted virtual org fairs on Wildcat Connection each quarter of the 2020 to 21 academic year. So a lot of students use the platform to explore opportunities to get involved with groups there. So I already highlighted one benefit of why it's good to use Wildcat Connection. One is that it centralizes everything. The second is that you have a predecessor and you'll have a successor, and this platform archives everything. So if you want to see what your predecessor did with regards to preferences and forms or events they created or announcements or news items, it's all linked to your Wildcat Connection group page, and you don't have to search through inboxes, Google Drive folders, etc. Lastly, it's NetID secure. So there might be some occasions where you want to spread a message far and wide, and there might be other times when you just want folks who are residents or just the exec board to see something. You can designate that level of access with documents, files, events, forms, and more. So when we do a demo in just a moment, I can share a bit more about that. As you explore Wildcat Connection, if you have questions, there are hundreds of support pages on the web. The search term is Campus Labs Engage, and then add whatever you're looking for. So Campus Labs Engage, create an event. Campus Labs Engage, election results. You'll find what you need that way. If you're thinking of a feature or you feel like there must be a way to do something on the platform and you just can't find it, you can always email me with my contact information right on the screen. Okay, so I'm going to talk about two phases. One is getting started with your managed organization access, and the second is once we get into fall and throughout the year. So the first step is to get managed access for your Res College page. And you can do that by visiting your Res College, the page for it on Wildcat Connection, and scrolling down to the officers section. And any of those folks who have a tile in officers can set you up with managed access if you don't already have it. Next, we encourage you to bookmark your Res College's Wildcat Connection page on your browser of choice, and then explore, see what documents, files, events, forms are all on there, and get familiar with it. Then you'll want to take a look at the About section for your Res College's page. Does it have a really old picture? Is the contact info out of date? Are there links to social media channels that you no longer use or you use but they're not linked? You can make updates to all those things pretty quickly. I always encourage folks who are new to an officer role to draft a welcome message. So introducing yourself to anyone that's visiting the page, introducing the board, or a welcome message to the future residents as we get closer to fall. Once we get to the fall, you can use Wildcat Connection to check the Finance tab for all active SOFO accounts. You can look at the calendar for upcoming events you might want to promote to residents, or they can assist with how you plan your events. And then you can also add announcements in the form of news items, just like that welcome message. You can create events here. It's very simple. And then you can also manage elections and any sort of board transition procedure. So with that, I'm going to change my share screen and do a brief demo on this platform. Okay, so this is the homepage of Wildcat Connection once you log in with your NetID and password. Now, let's say I want to make some changes to the SOA department site. So I can click my icon in the upper right and switch over to Manage mode. And in Manage mode, I can see the pages I have access to manage. I'll click the SOA page. And on this screen, you'll click the menu icon in the upper left to see all of the different tools you have access to manage. So let's start with the roster. On the roster, you can invite members with their email address. You can add or change roles or positions. And with those roles, you can also generate different levels of management access for specific roles. So for example, let's say there's a treasurer and they don't really need access to everything like creating an election or creating an event, but they need access to that finance tab. You can set up that position and just designate they have full access to the finance tab. So very quickly, I went to manage positions, and then I did create a position. And let's call them the financial manager. We'll make them an officer. And then we'll have limited access and just set them up with access for the finance tab. And then we can put a user on the roster in that role and they'll have that access. You can also use the roster tool to send out messaging, but I realize that a lot of the res colleges are just using listserv communication for that. Next, let's take a look at the About section. So this is where you can change the description that appears alongside the icon when someone searches for your res college page. There's a more detailed description you can edit, and you can also add in links. A section for contact information that's visible. And then other web and social media presences that you have. So you'll want to just do a quick scan to make sure this is all up to date. Next, you can explore the documents section. Now, You can upload a lot of different file types, but it does designate certain file types that it limits it to. So you can add files, you can put it into a specific folder, and you can also designate the access to it once it's up there. I won't do a full walkthrough on it, but as you look at your Res College's Wildcat Connection page documents, you should find the Constitution among other different archived files. Okay, and then on the Finance tab, if your Res College has active SOFO accounts, you'll see a historical ledger and transaction history related to it. So that's helpful. You don't have to visit the SOFO window or email SOFO just to get that information. It will appear here. It's also easy to set up an event. It's just like setting up an event on Facebook if you've done that before. To create an event, you'll need the information like where and when. You can make it an online event with a URL instead of an actual location. And then you can designate whether it's just visible to folks who are on the roster or folks with a net ID and password or anyone at all. So what's nice about this is rather than a Facebook event that might have public details visible, you can limit it to folks that have net ID and password and make it more secure. Okay, and then the last section I want to show is forms. This is, again, very similar to Google Forms. You can put in different question types. You can have the form open for a specific period of time. And you can limit the access for who completes it. So if it's something that's general, you can make it that anyone can complete it and they can complete it multiple times. If it's supposed to be something just for members of your organization, you can designate that access in the form properties as you're setting it up. There are more help topics than you could imagine on the Campus Labs site. So I'm not going to go into excruciating detail on just how to set up a form. Elections are a certain type of form, but it has its own section in the manage mode. So when you create an election, I have another video that's a full walkthrough on this, but you'll set up the time and date that the ballot is open. You can also set up an eligibility list, but the idea is that the election is completed securely and anonymously. So whoever manages the election can see who's actually participated, but they cannot see how they cast their vote in the election. There's a lot of tips and tricks with elections. I often help groups out on a one-on-one basis if they have any sort of tricky election that involves maybe runoffs or algorithms or other calculations. But it's pretty easy to set it up like a Google form, but just with added security and anonymity. So those are just a few examples of the features available to you now that you have Wildcat Connection Manage Org Access. It's always a great option to use when you need folks to fill out a form, manage an election, promote an event, or communicate about something. And we know that there's prospective students that explore this platform, as well as current students looking for events and opportunities. So for any questions, you can always email me and I'm happy to help. Thank you so much for watching.